Olá, tudo bem? Eu estou aqui falando com vocês do interior do estado de Nova York. Muitas pessoas não entendem que Nova York, nem como São Paulo, é uma cidade e também é um estado enorme, coberto com mato, e no verão fica muito quente e muito úmido. Eu estou num interior chamado Ithaca, onde mora mais ou menos 25 mil pessoas, mas tem uma enorme universidade chamada Cornell, onde estudo personagens brasileiros importantes, para bom ou por mal, como José Serra. Plínio Arruda fez o mestrado aqui. Eles têm uma das maiores faculdades de agrônomo no país. No momento tem um trânsito passando aqui, preciso prestar atenção, não posso olhar para a câmera. Carlos Weiner, do FRJ, estudou aqui, e o José Serra também, que um amigo do meu pai era professor dele, e falou que ele era um estudante brilhante, que ele não entende porque ele virou tão chato depois. Eu quero falar um pouco sobre o programa de hoje, né? Eu estou aqui em Nova York agora, pois o Leonardo Atush me mandou para representar 247 num congresso que aconteceu em Brooklyn semana passada, chamado Left Forum, onde tinha grandes nomes da esquerda mundial. E eu vou mostrar um pouco disso. A gente foi convidado pelo movimento social nova-iorquense, ou nova-iorquenho, chamado Defend Democracy in Brazil. Defend Democracy in Brazil é um grupo de brasileiros morando em Nova York, muita gente boa, que formou para lutar contra o golpe de 2016 e principalmente para lutar para a liberdade de Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Eles montam um painel sobre como a esquerda está lutando de volta contra o ataque fascista no Brasil, que é uma tendência que está acontecendo no mundo inteiro. Estou descendo uma escada aqui. Eu vou te mostrar porque eu estou descendo uma escada daqui a pouco, porque essa cidade, esse interior aqui é maravilhoso. Então, durante esse fórum, desse painel, eu fiz uma palestra e vou mostrar a palestra legendado, né, sobre mídia alternativa como força contra-hegemônica, a ressurgimento da direita, do fascismo aqui no mundo, no Brasil e no mundo. E no final, a gente foi basicamente atacado por um grupo de trotskistas gringos. Agora, eu tinha desligado minha câmera e nesse momento o Marcos Valéria do Defend Democracy estava filmando com o celular. Esse trotskista atacou Wagner Freitas e o Kuti, então eu rebati. Além disso, eu vou mostrar dois trechos curtinhos de uma palestra de David Harvey, maravilhoso. E o segundo trecho do fala é de um ex-Black Panther chamado Glenn Ford, que é líder de um grupo da mídia alternativa chamado Black Agenda Report. Então, eu espero que vocês gostem. Agora eu vou descer essa última escada aqui e mostrar para vocês porque eu peguei esse caminho aqui. Esse aqui é um cachoeira que corta no meio da cidade. E a cidade de Ithaca tem 156 cachoeiras. Eu vou mostrar um pouco mais dele na semana que vem, pois eu vou passar mais 2 semanas aqui. Então, um abraço para todos e todas. Eu espero que vocês gostem do programa.
Okay, so what is left to be done? I really felt like turning it around and saying, what should the left be doing? But, okay, I'll start with something that is left to be done. We need to abolish the capital class.
Okay. All right.
Now, I know that sounds, quite ridiculous, but actually, historically, it's not unfeasible. After World War II, developmental economists and all the rest of it decided that there was a class that stood in the way of economic development, which was the landed class, with latifundias and huge land holdings. And they decided to abolish them. And so we have this big wave of land reform, which is effectively dispossessing a landed elite of its properties and redistributing those properties to the mass of the population. So actually, there you have a program which was designed to abolish the power of a particular class, which in this case was the landed semi-feudal class that was in the way. Why should we not, as socialists right now, say that that's what we want to do to the capitalists?
Worker, and can let that worker go at will. So this place was founded on the maintenance of white supremacy and the expansion of white supremacy. And it's only in very, very recent years that they have found it necessary to cloak that whole history. We need to look at the United States as a white settler nation. And if we do, then everything that it in fact has done in history makes great sense. And that history of the development and expansion of a white settler nation goes directly to the present day. The United States' closest relationships with other nations in the world is with what's commonly called the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes are the United States, Canada, Britain, New Zealand, and Australia. The United States shares almost all of its intelligence on a regular basis, that is, day to day, not upon request, you get it when I got it, with those five nations. And who are those nations? They are Britain, the mother country, or the motherfucking country, and its white settler states, colonies. Canada, the United States, New Zealand, and Australia. So that the nature of the genesis of the United States has produced relationships that are based upon similar genesis in the world. The United States had to go through a makeover of the stories that it told internally and the stories that it told externally, the lies, to others and to itself after World War II, as it becomes the superpower, the unchallenged superpower on the capitalist side of the ledger. But that is a period of decolonization. And the Soviet Union, and I don't want to hear people talking about Stalinism and all that stuff, the Soviet Union being a champion of decolonization in the world and having given material aid to liberation movements in the world, was the ideological competitor with the United States with these emerging nations. And so the U.S. had to radically change its clothing.
I want to talk about a little bit about how Brazilian alternative media has kind of worked to build a space of counter-hegemony to these mainstream media oligarchies like Globo, which Eliara was talking about, which is extremely powerful. Globo was started by the United States during the US-backed dictatorship. And for the first year, it was founded as a kind of tool of social control. For the first year, it was run by Time Warner, a group of people from Time Warner. And one of the things they did was they mirrored the racial composition of American television at that time, which was like 1965. And so even today, even though Brazil's 53% Afro-Brazilian, if you look at Brazilian TV, it looks like you might have like one Afro-Brazilian character on each show, and that person might be a prostitute or a kitchen maid or a criminal or a police officer normally. It's getting a little bit better now. But it was created as a means of right-wing social control, you know? And they're the most powerful, they're one of the biggest open-air television networks in the world, maybe third or fourth. And they're very good at manipulating the narrative inside Brazil, even though they've begun losing control because of the internet and things. But as she showed how Globo visually demonstrated the PT party during this Lava Jato investigation, I'll just turn it a little bit. Thanks. I'm not going to show the whole thing. So, you see they showed a pipe, this red background with this money pouring out of it. It's important to remember that Lula was never even accused formally of corruption involving Petrobras Petroleum Company. And now with the Intercept revelations, they've shown the prosecutor speaking with a judge 3 days before his final trial, saying they didn't have any material evidence against him, and they didn't think he could prosecute him. But for years, as Eliara pointed out, this was the visual connotation with the Workers' Party, okay? So, and this is the kind of day-to-day reality that we on the left in Brazil have to deal with all the time, a very hostile media, right? And so, at the first World's, I'll talk a little bit about Brazilian alternative media. At the first World Social Forum in Porto Alegre, a group of organic left intellectuals, big names like Leonardo Boff from the Liberation Theology Movement, Juan Pedro Stedley from MST, and left-wing journalists formed a kind of non-profit cooperative called Forum, and they created a magazine called Forum Magazine. And this is no longer in print, they're a web presence, but they've become this counter-hegemonic force with hundreds of thousands of social media followers that prints news from, or runs news from a progressive perspective. And after they started, many other publications like Brasil do Fato started, and the one I work at is called Brazil 247, and it started around 2010 with some legendary old-time, journalists who'd fought against the military dictatorship, and very quickly it gained around 1 million followers on Facebook for the print news or the written news. But they started this kind of YouTube channel that's really basic. It's just normally people talking on Google Hangouts application, which can be linked to a live feed on YouTube really easily. And they just get interesting people. And like over the last 3 or 4 years, they've built up 400,000 followers on YouTube. They're getting 5,000 or 6,000 people are donating like $5 or $6 a month, to the cause. And on average, these shows, they run about 10 hours of programming a day. And it's just like intellectuals and leftist social movement leaders and people like that coming on and talking about the news of the day, really. They have about 10 hours of programming a day, and average, 30,000, 40,000 people watching each show, and it's done with almost no budget. And it's become this organization that oftentimes, if you look at the 10 top trending stories on social media during a week, maybe 2 of them, most of them come from these far-right, Koch brothers financed, very social media savvy organizations, but Brazil 247 usually gets about 2 or 3 of the top trending, stories of the week into this, what I feel to be a kind of hostile environment, which is these big right-wing monopolies over social media, right? So, oftentimes you hear like Lula or Dilma Rousseff say, what was the biggest mistake of the PT years? And Lula will say, well, we didn't regulate, Workers' Party or PT, Partido dos Trabalhadores. So we didn't, properly regulate or reform the media. And this was kind of a historic error, but it's not entirely true, because in 2014, Dilma Rousseff issued a decree authorizing 20% of the federal government's advertising money to go to independent media companies. And this was a big shot in the arm for the independent media, but at the same time, it drew increasing hostility from Globo and the other media oligarchies. And it's one of the things that contributed to this massive, I would say 3 or 4 year daily campaign of character assassination against the Brazilian Workers' Party that took place in the oligarchic media outlets. But I want to talk a little bit about how this spread into the Anglo media, because this is where my work for a website called Brazil Wire comes in. We established in 2014 because we noticed that there was this huge shift in the media, Anglo media portrayal of Brazil. Both the hegemonic media, which I believe you could say makes up part of the US integral state, like New York Times, Washington Post, but even in the progressive media, in the left media, that there was a wave of anti-PTism which started, you know? And so in 2014, we noticed there was a shift from Brazil being portrayed as a kind of winner nation to being portrayed in the English language media as a loser nation. There was an article by Simon Romero in the New York Times that was like 23 pages long, full of really depressing looking black and white photos of sad looking people in front of unfinished construction projects, most of which have subsequently been finished. And it was called something like Big Dreams Fizzle in Brazil. You know, and this to me kind of marked the beginning of this cycle. And so what we saw for years, you know, just over and over again, the week before the 2014 presidential elections, the New York Times ran 9 articles unethically and misleadingly connecting Dilma Rousseff to Petrobras Petroleum Corporation corruption, a connection that's never been established at all. But in the lead up to the elections, also at this time we had David Axelrod came down to Brazil to work with the opposition, the right-wing, super corrupt candidate Aécio Neves, neoliberal. We had the U.S. Democratic Party establishment coming down and helping us. So we saw this coup in the workings, and the media was a huge ally to it. You know, and this is why we, established Brazil Wire, to try and break this media and break this narrative, this massive narrative. Dilma Rousseff has called it a war of narratives. You know, is this still running? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm doing too many things at once, as usual. It was a war of narratives, right? So one thing that I found particularly troubling at this time was, and I think it's a trend that's happening around the world that I'm noticing, there are times when this kind of vanguard Anglo-left narrative doesn't seem to really challenge capitalism. It complements the imperialist project. Because between 2014 and 2017, me, Brian Pitts from University of Indiana, and Sean Mitchell from Rutgers Newark, we did an analysis of all 38 articles about Brazil that ran in Jacobin. Every one of them attacked the PT Party. Often they attacked the labor unions that make up the basis of the PT Party. And there was this constant narrative that, like, the PT is not really leftist. They're not ideologically pure leftists because, for example, as one article said, they opened the door to neoliberalism in Brazil. Now, you could make, an argument. Brazil's a big, complex country. You could make an argument that PT acted in a neoliberal fashion. But if you remove a few neoliberal macroeconomic policies from the rest of the political conjuncture, that would be the only way you could make that argument. If you ignore the fact that, like, one of the key tenets of neoliberalism is minimum wage suppression, and when Lula took office, the minimum wage was $49 a month in Brazil, in US dollars, and when he left office it was $315. You can't call something like that neoliberal, nor could you call, Keynesian stimulus for internal production, manufacturing, and consumption, $200 billion spent on that. So you saw not, I single out Jacobin because of this one article we wrote, but we saw it in The Nation and, and a lot of other leftist publications, and we feel like, compared to the solidarity that we see for what happened in Venezuela, if you look at what happened in Brazil, we didn't get that much solidarity. It seemed like a lot of people on the US left were confused about what was going on because there were mixed messages being sent out by a lot of left publications. And I think that the role, I don't know really what's going on in the American left. I don't want to make some big generalization, because this is the first time I've been back in the U.S. for a month in 20 years. I've been living in Brazil 25 years. But what I think, as an American, right, because I'm an American citizen, I feel like if you want to call yourself a leftist, you should look first at what your country is doing to other countries in the third world, and you should talk about how you can stop the imperialist actions coming from your country, and not just sit there giving out instructions on how different, like the left in Nicaragua is not left enough, the left in Brazil is too neoliberal or something like that. Why not express solidarity and then see what you can do in your country to stop the U.S. from screwing everybody over? Because we know they're shitting all over that. It's not just Brazil, it's everywhere. You see the garbage they're doing in Venezuela. They ruined Honduras. Brazil now has, they're saying just because of the public health cuts, maybe 100,000 people are going to die in Brazil. Bolsonaro kicked out almost 10,000 Cuban doctors from all of the poorest and most remote regions. They've stopped giving out free antiretroviral drugs in the state of Bahia. I mean, people are dying from this stuff. And all of these American corporations made a huge amount of money. Boeing, Microsoft, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Monsanto, all these, after the 2016 coup, President Temer privatized 75% of the offshore oil reserves, which had been allocated in a presidential decree by Dilma Rousseff for the profits were allocated for public health and education, 100% of the profits. So he cut that program out, privatized 75% of the petroleum, and then he issued a 1 trillion real tax break to foreign petroleum multinationals working in Brazil over the course of 20 years. That's about $250 billion. So now they're saying they don't have any money, they have to push the retirement age up to 75 years for some people. They've had to cut public health, they're trying to cut public education, and all these US companies are making billions of dollars. So I would think that a starting point, if you were a US leftist academic or journalist or something like that, would be to look at where the money's going, how the US is benefiting, and what Americans can do to stop or to revert some of this situation. Instead of saying like, well, the macroeconomic policy tripod was too neoliberal during the Louis years or something like that. So that's just a pet peeve I have. I thought I'd get off my chest, but I'll just end with a little bit more about building counter-hegemonic spaces in the media. I think what we need is more solidarity. Criticism is good if you're criticizing power, but if you're criticizing someone who's left power already, I don't think maybe it's, with the rise of Bolsonaro, it's not really the right moment for this. What we need is solidarity, and I'm also, like Juscendi, really worried about the way that YouTube and Facebook and Twitter have started censoring, left, and even in some cases demonetizing left-wing sites, and I don't know what we can do to break this grip, because all of these companies, we see that basically WhatsApp application connected to Facebook won the election for Bolsonaro after Lula was removed from the race. So we see like the US hand is in everything. And I guess a challenge for the left in media right now is to break this control of these social media monopolies, And I guess I'll just end it at that. Okay, thanks a lot.
Some of the compañeros who've been in some of the demonstrations protesting the murder of Marielle Franco, including the one in Union Square that you mentioned. And I'd actually like to make a couple of comments about the recent June 14th general strike in particular, particularly from the standpoint of my comrades in Brazil of the Liga Quarta Internacionalista do Brasil, which is a Trotskyist organization. So I think that there was discussion about a war of narratives in Brazil. I think that there's a class war in Brazil right now. And this is a war, class war, right now of a very reactionary, misogynist, racist, homophobic government backed by important sections of imperialism against the oppressed and against the working class. Part of the preparation of this government was the extremely anti-democratic measures that our comrades opposed, of the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff and then the completely fraudulent imprisonment and silencing of Lula. But we don't politically, we call for them to be freed and to have their democratic rights restored, but we don't politically support the alliance of the PT, which I think in the current general strike in June 14th, in the recent general strike in June 14th, we see, in my opinion, some of the reasons of what this looks like right now. And I don't think that this is a question of abstract ideological purity. I think it's a question of what, in my opinion, and the comments in Brazil who have published materials on this, is what is required to defeat this reactionary assault by Bolsonaro and others against the oppressed and the working class. Is power. They're not going to be convinced by a message, right? They're not going to be changed in their morality. They have to be defeated by power. So in the recent general strike of June 14th, which all of the labor federations supported, unfortunately the leadership of the labor federations literally told the workers, and the head of the CUT, the Central Única dos Trabalhadores, the labor federation historically associated with the PT, literally said that June 14th is a day to stay at home, a day to fold our arms. Well, to the contrary, the comrades in Brazil, whose opinions I agree with, said no, to the contrary. It should have been a day to occupy, for example, the Duque de Caxias refinery, to shut down the Companhia Siderúrgica Nacional, the national steel company plant, which is the largest steel plant in Latin America, and to use the power of the working class and the oppressed to defeat this capitalist attack. But that in order to do that, this power needs to be unchained from the alliance with capitalist politicians. And that this is a historic issue of this enormously powerful working class in Brazil, and this enormous, basically, huge need to fight back against all of the different forms of oppression that we've been hearing about, to be chained to the existing institutions and parties of the bourgeoisie. And until and unless that is happened, then this situation is, in our opinion, going to continue to get worse. So we need to have a revolutionary workers' party fighting for a workers' and peasants' government. That's our view. Thank you.
Could I just address that? But just very quickly, because I don't accept mischaracterizations of the June 14th strike, which I participated in. Okay, Wagner Freitas, the president of CUT, you took him completely out of context. He was comparing the June 14th general strike to the May 15th and May 30th education protests, which brought around 1.8 million people to the streets of 200 cities in each of those 2 days. In 19 of the largest cities in Brazil, the unions shut down all public transportation. So Wagner Freitas said, the objective of the CUT in this strike is not to bring 2 million people to the streets like we did, the teachers' unions and things on the 15th and 30th. It's to stay home. And 45 million people stayed home. Now, many unions affiliated with the CUT decided, because it's the CUT Union Federation is bottoms up, they decided to do their own things, occupy steel works, burn tires. I helped shut down 23rd of May Avenue in downtown Sao Paulo in Russia with burning tires and filmed it for Telesur, and there were CUT people there. So I think it's a mischaracterization of what Wagner Freitas said, and I see that a lot in these Trotskyist organizations. And I'd like to remind you that the PSTU, which is the largest Trotskyist party in Brazil, supported the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, okay? And that didn't help fight fascism.